If you correspond with Ralf on television, video, or telephone, audio, or you chat, text, or email him, you're giving him permission to duplicate it, rebroadcast it on any of the Take Your Life Back Today show broadcasts.
Yeah, beat your addiction, live free. Ralf Friedrichs is who you see. Listen in when you're feeling low. Take back your life, today's show. Beat your addiction, live free. Ralf Friedrichs is who you see. Listen in when you're feeling low. Take back your life, today's show. Stay positive, hope, and keep faith. Stand strong against any odds that you face. Put away the alcohol and the drugs. Fill your time with the things you love. Addiction is tough, but it's worth the work. Treat your body what it's worth. Spread positivity, inspire all. If we stand together, we will never fall. I help others see the other sides of life. A sober life, letting go of the strife. So give me a call, I can help. 1-844-405-HELP. Homeless shelters, hospitals, jails, wherever you are. I am Ralf Friedrichs and I am here for you. 1-844-405-HELP.
Hello, my name is Ralf Friedrichs. I'm an addiction recovery coach and the host of the Take Your Life Back Today show. I want to talk about opiate history from wonder drug to abuse drug. Wonder drug to abuse epidemic of these drugs. There's a long history, my friends, of opiate addiction in the United States. The FDA and the CDC have started taking steps to address the opiate abuse epidemic. This was on CNN. The abuse of opiates, including prescription painkillers, drugs like heroin, is something the United States has struggled with since the early 1900s. But it's a problem that keeps coming back, my friends. Now, federal agencies are trying to tackle the problem in difficult ways. The Centers of Disease Control and Prevention recently issued guidelines for prescribing opiates for chronic pain, part of an effort to push doctors to prescribe pain medication responsibly. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced the immediate release of opiate painkillers such as oxycodone and fentanyl will now have to carry a black box warning about the risk of abuse and addiction and overdose death. To understand how we got to the current epidemic, let's take a look back. In the 1900s, early 1900s, morphine and the creation of pain management. Civil War veterans whose injuries were treated with morphine were among those hooked on opiates at the turn of the century. But drugs were already on the scene and being consumed at alarming rates, along with other things way before the war. Let's do this here for a minute. This came directly from Mark Quionis, a scholar who studied drug abuse during the Civil War. In 1998, the Bayer Company started production of another opiate, heroin, on a commercial scale. From its first clinical trials, it was considered a wonder drug, and the use spread as addicts discovered that its effects be amplified by injecting it. Doctors must lead us out of our opiate abuse epidemic. Kimberly Johnson, director of the Center of Substance Abuse Treatment at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, said that in the early 1900s, there wasn't much known about poppy seeds. Drugs like heroin were used as cough suppressants. They are effective pain relievers, but they're also very, very addictive. By the 1920s, doctors were aware of highly addictive nature of opiates and tried to avoid treating patients with them. Heroin became illegal in 1924. World War II was the turning point for doctors treating pain as doctors worked to treat severely injured soldiers. Anesthesiologists opened nerve block clinics in the 1950s and 60s to manage pain without having to resort to surgery. In 1960, it also was utilized to maintain the surgery process, according to history published in the Journal of American Medical Association. 1970s, 80s, and early 90s, a change in thought. Drug use in the United States escalated so much that in the 1970s, President Gerald Ford set a task force to study the problem. It recommended that the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Customs Service focus less on intercepting marijuana and cocaine traffickers and more on heroin. By the mid and late 70s, when Percocet and Vitigan became on the market, doctors had long been taught to avoid prescribing highly addictive opiates to patients. Should or shouldn't you? A Patient's Guide to Painkillers. You should you or shouldn't you? Is something that you need to ask yourself constantly. But 11-line letter printed on the New England Journal of Medicine in January 1980 pushed back the popular thought that using opiates to treat chronic pain was a risky situation. In it, Jane Porter and Dr. Herschel Jick mentioned that their analysis of 11,882 patients who were treated with narcotics had unbelievable results. They wrote that the development of addiction is rare in medical patients with no history of addiction. Jick told the Washington Post in 1977 that less than 1% he studied died from reaction of the drugs. I think very serious adverse reactions are about as infrequent as could possibly expect, given the enormous amount of exposure to drugs. Patients with terminal illness started being treated more with prescription opiates, and doctors and researchers wanted to look at treating patients with chronic pain. 6 years later, a paper by pain management specialist Dr. Russell Portnell chronicled 38 patients treated with opioids for non-cancer pain. 2 of them had issues with addiction to the drug, but he concluded that opiate maintenance therapy can be a safe, solitary, and more humane alternative to surgery or not treating the patient with chronic pain. The studies by Portnoy and others created discussion in 1990s around making pain treatment a number one for all patients. 90s around making pain medication a priority for patients. Johnson of the Center of Substance Abuse Treatment said that after heroin epidemic in the 70s, doctors were concerned about the abuse of opioids in the 80s, and things started to shift in the 90s. People started talking about pain as a fifth vital sign, Johnson said. There was a real push to do a better job of treating pain. 96, the birth of oxycodone. Purdue Pharma starting testing oxycodone as a long-term painkiller in 94, and it went on the market in 96. In the early 90s, the number one painkiller prescription filled at U.S. pharmacies increased 2 million to 3 million each every year, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse. From 95 to 96, the number of prescriptions jumped by 8 million. 98, Purdue Pharma created a video promotion called I Got My Life Back. It followed 6 people who suffered from chronic pain and were treated with oxycodone. The company gave out 15,000 copies of this video to be used in doctors' waiting rooms. They don't wear it out. They go on working. They do not have serious medical side effects, a doctor featured in the video said. So these drugs, which I repeat are our best, strongest pain medication, should be used much more than they are for the patients in pain. A year after the video came out, the overall number of opiate painkiller prescriptions filled jumped by 11 million. Purdue Pharma took out ads for oxycodone in medical journals across the nation in 2000. 7 years later, the company and 3 of the executives will be charged with misbranding its drug and downplaying the possibility of addiction. 3 executives pleaded guilty, and the company settled on with the U.S. government of $635 million. A spokesman for Purdue Pharma said that the company's products represents less than 2% of all opiate prescription, and that Purdue has led the industry in creating medicines with abuse-deterrent properties. Opiate abuse and addiction is one of our top national health challenges, and that's why for a decade Purdue Pharma has undertaken efforts to address the crisis. 2001, a new standard making pain treatment a priority came to the attention of the Joint Commission, a non-profit that sets standards and accredits hospitals and medical centers. The group was created in the standard 2001. Pain is assessed in all patients. Medical centers and their doctors were required to examine the patient's pain levels, and the Joint Commission would give hospitals requirements for improvement if they failed to meet the standard. Though the standard makes no mention of treating pain from the drugs or even mentioning opiates as a treatment, the Joint Commission printed a book in 2000 for purchase by doctors as part of required education seminars. It all started changing in the year 2000 and therefore, there is no doubt that the widely held belief that short-term use of opiates has low risk of addiction was an important contributor to inappropriate prescribing patterns for opiates and subsequent opiate epidemic. Doctors are now on high alert. The makers of oxycodone released a newly formulated version of the drug, one with abuse deterrent within it, with the hope of making it more difficult to crush the abuse by snorting or injecting it. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine surveyed that more than 2,500 people who used oxycodone before, after safety measures were added. It found that the anti-abuse measures were put in place. 35.6% of the people questioned admitted abusing drugs and alcohol, and then after the new one was put in the market, there was a 24% decrease. Most people that we know don't use oxycodone to get high anymore. They use heroin. So we need to be aware that oxycodone, heroin, are killers. We need to be aware that they are very addictive. And you need to be aware if you have an addictive personality. Start today. This was the opiate seminar to teach you all about opiates. In 2016, we know of no other medication that kills patients so frequently as heroin and oxycodone. Let's start today. Let's start today taking your life back. Call me at 844-405, and I promise I will help you take your life back.
Have you ever prayed but never got an answer, and wondered if God was really there? Did you feel all hope was gone, but in His time He came along and answered the prayer you thought was gone? There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. I have read if you will ask, you shall receive. No matter what it is, I still believe. There is no prayer too small, and even when we fall, He gives us just exactly what we need. There is no prayer too small, for God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. He always knows what's right. God hears them all. There is no prayer too small. My God hears them all. The answer may not be just what you want, but He always knows what's right, even when we think it's wrong. Just remember, there is no prayer too small. No prayer too small. No prayer too small.